Well, hello and welcome. Let me say happy Workers' Day to you all. This is a beautiful day. Work that brings you dignity, brings you a sense of purpose and meaning. And there's a day to celebrate it. And why not? Well, I personally love the theme, mobilizing Ghana's future through creation of decent jobs. That's a whole essay topic on its own. Mobilizing Ghana's future through the creation of decent jobs. One will say, what is a decent job? We want to find out that we've seen so many workers agitating all through the years. Never do we see the employees agitating. However, you and I know employees are constantly complaining about the attitude of workers. We want to find out the rights of both the employee and the employer. My name is Nana Sakwa, the fourth Chief of Akwamu Dumasa, and your favorite host. When I come back, I'll introduce my guests and we'll start talking work. Well, thank you very much for staying. And with me in the studio is Mr. Austin Gamey, who's a labor consultant. Not new to the show, but new this year. So happy New Year.
Same to you.
And you're looking fabulous on today's Labor Day.
Yes.
Well, how has your day been?
Well, as usual, the media have been engaging me. I find it normally difficult to say no. So I have to be in Accra and went back to Tema and now here with you.
Great. Aren't we grateful? Yeah. But I want us to start, even though we'll look at the relationship, but let's start with the theme, mobilizing Ghana's future through creation of decent jobs.
Yes. It's extremely important. We have a government in place now, and we have to, together with them, put together our shoulders onto the important thing, to keep Ghana united, to mobilize ourselves for the assignments that is ahead of all of us, at least for the next 4 years. So it's extremely very important that all of us, working people, both in the formal and informal sectors of the economy, will have to put ourselves together as one nation to enable us to develop, with common purpose. And I think it's a very well, planned thing that the TUC or organized labor put together, and I think I support it fully.
What's the relationship between government and labor union? They say agrobeswa, if it's going to boil, it will start simmering. What do you sense the relationship between labor and the government?
Well, it's normal that when you marry new, you take extremely good care of the lady. Especially we the men are normally. I recall when my firstborn married a woman, and his own sister was about to touch the hand. He beat the hand of the of the sister and said, "Jainumu." I say, "Hey, my friend, what is this?" And apparently the jealousy was so high. So I think that for now, it's important if the government of the day, who is also an employer, will ensure that they follow the principles laid out in labor relations and go by the law, and then the opinion relationship that goes with communication. I think that they will have a very good time with the working people. If they fail to address that aspect of communication as enshrined in the law and best practice, then they will have difficulty. For now, we are in honeymoon. And I'm hoping that they will keep it up at least to the end of the 4 years.
Good. The other thing, mobilizing Ghana, creating decent jobs. Mr. Gamey, the average Ghanaian, who has gone through the average school, thinks a decent job is any job that you're sat behind the table. I mean, even if you're not wearing a tie, you should be sitting behind the table answering a phone call or typing on a machine. And therefore, we have a teeming number of people who could have done so many things else, but are all in line waiting for somebody to retire so they get into an office. I mean, how challenging would that be? You know, creation of decent jobs. We are all thinking we're going to wear suit and tie and sit behind a desk.
Well, it's a misplaced understanding. You know, unfortunately, when, let's say, you retire, then it's pronounced that Nana Kohansan had gone now into farming or fish farming or poultry. That is derogative to the people who are already in that field. So if it's true that decent job is inclusive of an organizer, who without him, when your car tie is deflated, then you are in trouble. We should see that job as also a decent job. It is not true that those of us who work in the office with some kind of flowery kind of dressing and so forth and so on, our jobs are to be described as decent, and that of the organizer is not decent. That is an untrue statement. So it's for us to understand and appreciate the fact that any job that is worth doing, and the person who is undertaking that assignment loves the job and is willing to do it, that to him is a decent job. Otherwise, when your car have deflation of tie, go under it yourself with your coat and tie and see how beautiful it will look like. But that is the way that fellow feels passionate about that part of the job, and he wants to do it with the joy that goes with it. So I think I differ with people who think that decent job means working in a factory, in an office, or sitting the way you and I are sitting now. That cannot be true.
But we haven't done a lot to change that perception.
Yes.
From the way we, like even if you go to school, I mean, sitting behind the desk, you're not allowed to. So we think that any job that makes your hand dirty, any job, carpentry, plumbing, mason, welding, fitting, anything that's going to make your hand dirty, yes, it means you are a second-class citizen.
Exactly.
Can the TUC, I don't know, lead some rethinking revolution for us to appreciate that? Look, these are, they are nothing, they are not second-class citizens, and like you're saying, without him, you're stuck.
Yes. Well, it's unfortunate it looks like that, and the perception had gone deep. We can start anew now through the education system. It may not be the TUC, because they themselves are also working in an office. What is important now is for the educational system to be restructured so that as we mentor and coach people from the beginning, and the people desire to do and are willing to do to pursue a particular vocation, that fellow should be encouraged to pursue it to its logical conclusion. When we're writing the labor law and we go to Copenhagen, we go to Denmark, we're told about how decent job looks like. And we're taken around in certain field, and we found out that it's not only working in the office. That's why we crafted the law in the way we crafted it. So I think that that perception is self-deceptive. And I think the educational system will better serve its useful purpose if we begin talking to the children right from class 4, going forward right into the university level. What about our children who did maybe mechanical engineering? That's why some of them don't want to work under a car or work under something. They better go there. That is the joy of the business,
Will standardization and probably licensing, bring some, I don't know if I should say, respect to it, so that that if I go to a mechanic to change my gearbox, it's 6 hours. Whether he does it in 2 minutes or 3 days, he can only charge me 6 hours. And he's displayed his price that, look, every hour I'm charging you 60 cedis or 100 cedis. I mean, will something like that make us now be aware of them?
Well, to a large extent, some, by all means, without standard, the world will go haywire. So we need some standardization generally. But I think it's important we begin this as a youth development, if not through the educational mainstreaming. Then some program will have to be consciously tailored to bring about that consciousness that your work is what makes you who you are, and however it looks like. Otherwise, Chief, if with all due deference to people who are eating now, if your toilet gets choked and they have to use the rod to derod it and cause the water to flow, and the people who are to work there go into that tank, are they indecent job? So it's the language, it's the way we are looking at the language and the way we push it around is what makes it look as if it's useless. Otherwise, without that, your place will be stinking. And so I think it's important that we appreciate the fact that everyone's job is important and we have to take care of it. That is just about it.
The other thing I want to find, I don't know if we've done any research. So how much of the unemployment in Ghana now is due to the fact that, listen, there is work. It's just that it's not work that you would have want to dream of. So there could be a whole team of people who could have been superb joineries or carpenters or superb masonry painters, but think that no, this job is beneath me. Even if you pay me a quarter of what I would have earned in painting and just give me a suit and tie, I'm happy with it. How much have we done a research to find out?
Yes, I was talking to some group of people today and I said to them clearly that we should understand the fact that the structure of our national economy must be properly compartmentalized. You see, we have formal sector jobs like the type we are in now. Then we have the secondary part of it, which is the strong informal sector, but somehow today the workers who are working there, it is a formal job to them. The Makola people who are working there, you can't call them unemployed people. You can't call them their indecent job. They hold the key properties in this nation. I formed part of the team that wrote the pension scheme. We interviewed them, and I can guarantee you that they hold the properties of this nation. They hold a lot of the big buildings you see in Accra here. They have invested in people. And also, if you take I mentioned the organizer a while ago, I mentioned people who have set up small workshops that you can go and buy some parts from them and fix your car and do related matters. Are they in indecent job? No, they are in decent job. Today we buy cars from other places. How did they start? How did Microsoft start? How did the people start? They all started from small shops and they have become big. So however it is, informally, formally, we must give them, the respect that is due. I know people who are doing aquaculture today in Akosombo. They are in big-time business. Without them, you can't buy fish. You get it at a cutthroat price. But because of their presence now, fish is reasonably available and at a reasonably affordable price. So every job is decent, except that we are giving it a kind of connotation that has nothing to do with Africa and has nothing to do with Ghana. If there is a convention somewhere that in Switzerland, you may not do that kind of job the way we do it here, this is the only technology we have access to now. And so we must understand it. Those throwing the things into the river and catching the fish for us, we shouldn't think that they are not in decent job. They are in real decent job. Otherwise, when you close from here, go and undress yourself, go to Akosombo and fish and come back to here the next day. You can't. So somebody will do something, someone else will do. Somebody is listening to us now and is forming his opinion as to what he wants to do tomorrow. So that is the kind of thing we must all appreciate. So there is the informal, even people who are doing just hand-to-mouth type of job. That is what they are doing. That's what they are feeding their wives and their children with. Their children have gone to school. Some of them are in better position today than perhaps you and I. And so everyone's job is decent, except that we are twisting it to suit our taste.
The other thing the president mentioned today was that, out of 13 million people who seem to be in sort of unemployment, only 2 million were in the formal sector. I mean, that's a huge number that probably are being missed.
Yes. So what we need to do is for the chief labor officer, in writing the Labor Act, right from Section 6 of the law. We put there that every quarter the chief labor officer should find ways and means of getting employers to feed them with information. So we have data we can rely on to speak. So you give this information to write into Makola, so that everyone with a certain shop will feed the chief labor officer with information that I have 3 workers that work with me. I pay their social security, I do A, B, C, D. You go to Europe, right at the airport, somebody with a small kiosk is hooked to the national grid to the extent that when you buy, you have to punch and pay your tax and so forth. That's how we used to develop the nation. So I think that we really are not implementing some part of our laws, many other laws, inclusive this one. That is what is creating the problem. So if you can have reliable data, we will know that people in informal sector are operating from this angle. And everybody will then appreciate where we are. Then the schools can tailor measure their curriculum and their programs to prepare people for the world of work.
And then the all-important ECG sale. President says the Ghanaians will own not less than 51%. And then he went on further to say that, there will be no compulsory reentrenchment from there. That's why I found it a bit difficult. I mean, if I own 49% of the business and I don't need 20 drivers, what do? Am I lumbered with 20 drivers? By me, somebody will go if I don't need them.
Well, we are living in an age where we have to find sometimes ways and means of compromising on certain things. But the fact remains, before PNT was sold to become Vodafone today, we had in excess close to some 200 and over painters in that organization, carpenters and masons. We don't need those people in that business. If I'm buying it and even I have 49%, I must bring my card on the table and to negotiate and have people. Fortunately, I'm sure the president do know, all right, we have a law we have to abide by. If you want to declare people redundant, there is a process you have to go through. I do not think the president is necessarily saying that there should never be any such thing. He meant well, and so it's for the employer who must decently, maybe this is where we should use that word, decently apply to the chief labor officer that these are the consequences we are facing. If you have a union there, you have a conversation with them. You all understand and appreciate the fact that if we don't do A, B, C, D, this thing will collapse on all of us. So it doesn't make sense keeping it hanging on you. You're like Malcolm building coming down before people saying that there was a crack and we saw it and we didn't. It was too late. So now is the time. Indeed, the president has generally painted the picture for us. That is the intention. But if tomorrow the thing is crumbling down, I do not think the president will say that, fold your arm and see it that way. He knows what is right.
But won't the unions then get up and say, well, that's not what you told us?
The unions know that we have a law. They have in the collective agreement, there is space for redundancy. There can be redundancy. Nobody should live under any illusion that there cannot be a redundancy just because they are doing a transformation and change management in a particular organization. It is not so. History will not pardon us if we do that. So we will not blame the president for, he's making a global statement. It's for us to see the nitty-gritties and ensure that the right thing is done.
Mr. Gamey, but from the NDC through to the MPP, one thing that they've constantly assured workers is that you're not losing your job, you're not losing your job, you're not losing your job. And, those who are in the business fraternity, they look at some of the size and the workers there and they know that, listen, if these boys come in, they'll work with half the people you are employing. But constantly they're saying, don't worry, you won't lose your job. And it's, I can see the red bands and the placards coming.
It's true. There are two sides of this coin. That's one straightforward part of it I've just said. The other part is that we have data on, let's say, Ghana as a nation. ECG belong to all of us. Therefore, we have a data. If we ask the HR people there, they will tell us that the data lines up. You are about 58 years old. Somebody is 60 years old. Somebody is about to be 60 years old. So natural attrition will take place. plus people who are of age will have to go on retirement. Do you have to replace? No. Do you have to employ when it is necessary? Yes. So it's up to the employer who is coming there to ensure that he gets the right people to advise on how the people management side of the business should be taken care of. I think that they should be able to account for it. I want to maintain that the president made a general statement. It does not mean that if the thing is crumbling, he will fold his arm. I don't think so.
There were two schools of thoughts. Those who said, nope, don't sell it, let's manage it well. And those who say, why are you so, hard up? Float shares, let people invest in it and let it look after itself. Which school did you belong to?
Well, there are several ways of killing a cat. So there can be floating of shares, but the point is that there are people there working. They will have to go through a certain reorientation to appreciate the fact that this is the way we want to go. A change and a transformation, not just change for the sake of changing, but a total transformation of the working environment at ECG will be the one that we should be aiming at. I think that we've gotten to a place where Ghanaian working people must accept that change should not be a figure of speech. It shouldn't be a cliche. It should be real and meaningful. It must have value attached to that kind of change we are talking about. So in effect, ECG must go through a complete transformation because the services they provide is good, but it can get better and become the best. I think that's where we are now. Whoever gets the opportunity to manage ECG, there are several ways they can go about it, and the beneficiary ultimately will be the Ghanaians.
So, ECG, of all its numerous problems, the two that really stand out is inability to collect the funds and also efficiency, these two. ECG has a strong union. You never see the unions come out and say, listen, maybe because of ABC, we are unable to collect the revenue and therefore we are agitating the management, maybe give us soldiers to go around to collect the money, or let's automate the system efficiency-wise, let's do this. It's always, well, don't sack us, just keep us in the job. Don't sack us, just keep us in the job. When are, employers going to agitate so that they can get the arms and tools to work?
Well, to be honest with you, the present General Secretary of the Public Utility Workers Union is a very nice gentleman who has a deep understanding and appreciates the need for things to be done and done well. I've met him on a few occasions, and I can say on authority that if the employer will engage them based upon the principles that are espoused both in the labor law plus their own policies as employers, engage them in a good conversation, they will contribute towards the development of the organization. I think that in the absence of engaging people, not in an argument and debate and so forth and so on, but decently engaging them in a brainstorming session to generate options that will fit in the purpose of the organization, I think that will have a long way to go, and it will benefit the whole nation. But I guarantee you, if they can invite him and sit with him, he has good intentions about how things should go about UCG.
I'm going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll look at the attitude of the worker, and particularly the civil service. We've all heard about civil service. Oh, you get there Friday by 3 p.m., they're closed. You get there Monday by 8 p.m., they're not there. They are reading newspapers and eating the peanuts. Where does this perception and stigma come from? Don't move. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we're talking about mobilizing for Ghana's future through creation of decent jobs. And today we're going to look at the employees' relationship, rights and duties of both the employee and the employer. We're going straight to the civil service, and just before the break, I wanted to find out where this stigma or this perception that the average civil service guy comes to work late, reads the newspaper, works lotto, and on Friday after 3 o'clock you never find him or her at the office, and the general work attitude of the civil servant perception is that it's not right. Is it true or is it just a perception?
To a large extent, I'm fortunate that I've been in both the private sector and the public sector. And I do know that there is some kind of lousy attitude that goes with work ethics generally in the public service. Because we don't follow the principles of the law, our own, the rules and regulations that are within the civil service and public service, we don't follow them as expected of us. That notwithstanding, the truth also remains that they work reasonably well when they are asked to do it, but we do not have to come to that level. All we need is, because the public service itself is a corporate entity. Corporate entity in the sense that is how it is established. Let's take ministry. One of the ministries, let's say local government, employment and labor relations and so forth and so on. The statement read by the president in parliament, the budget read by the minister of finance on behalf of the president, are all part and parcel of the policy of the government of the day, which is the employer of the public and civil service. Therefore, they have a corporate objective stated there in those two key policies read out. So, what are the various ministries which are supposed to be the implementing leads in this matter and their various subunits? What kind of objectives and strategies do they develop, and therefore they're going to descend down right to the shop floor level, where you and I will be given our targets, as also stated in Section 8 of the Labour Act, that you, the employer, call it government, you are expected to give each and every one the targets so long as they remain on your payroll. But by the end of first quarter, you do some appraisal, review. By the second quarter, you do a review. By the third quarter, you do a review. And we now know that you have not been able to accomplish the purpose for which you have been engaged. You yourself will agree and sign onto it, because it's going to be an objective performance appraisal system in place. Once these things are in place, and we are dutifully and conscientiously doing our work, there will be no debate in anywhere regarding the perception that people formed about the public and civil service. But they are very nice people who have been trained in diverse ways. All they need further is further recalibration of the necessary knowledge that they need to have. And then the skills that you go with the kind of job, because things are changing. And because things are changing, we cannot remain static and say that this is the way we have been doing things and so we will continue to do it that way. We cannot compete in the international market. So what is required now that the government is new and they are living in honeymoon for now, they should take advantage, maybe get people who have the know-how to assist them to make sure that they dovetail the policies they have into the Labour Act and ensure that people perform in accordance with the rules and regulations as enshrined in both the law and the policies of the employer. But I do not think that we should even be laying the blame on the working people, because people are paid as the principals, that is, from the chief director to the directors to their principals and so forth and so on. They are to ensure that work is done, because at that level you have no excuse to give us who pay their monthly pay, because you pay the monthly pay of them. We all pay taxes and pooled into one, kitty, and out of it they use in paying them. So they cannot do anything they like. And we sit down aloof and say that, well, they are not doing their work well, they are bad people, and so forth and so on. That should not be tolerated.
Does the employer, government, have any right? Once they employ people, does the employer have any rights?
Yes, they have tremendous right. The law says that the employer must write its policies, programs, and plans as to how they want to execute it. Not only ending there, they must ensure that they set targets for each and every one.
What if the employee doesn't do it?
The employee has no choice. The law says it is the right of the employer And it's the duty of that employer to train, retrain, and guide the person, give him the tools and the working materials and equipment to be able to perform. And it's also the duty of that worker under Section 11 of the Labor Act to work conscientiously because you chose to apply for the job you have been employed. So the law says you must work conscientiously in that lawfully chosen occupation. On top of that, you must report for work punctually and regularly, not to come and come there before you come if you're watching in your habine to come and sit down and now start eating. That's not the way it's supposed to go. That's why, I mean, when I work also before as an ordinary worker, get up early in the morning those days, walk all the way from Adabraka to the station to pick train to Tema, and get to my work. And we close, I come back before I come and cook because I was a bachelor at the time. You know, so you do not have any right to say that you want to choose and pick how you want to work. Not under my cover.
How secure is a government employee, job-wise? How secure are they? Because they seem to be like part of the furniture, immovable. I mean, we're listening to Public Accounts Committee and some of the horrendous things that will come. You hear teachers, they can even defile, abuse, all the words, just transfer them to a next school. The Minister for Lands, went out, saw somebody who was drunk, bring him to my office. It seems the job security there is watertight.
That was a killer punch. You know, when I heard that, this can't transfer someone, make him be taken to the hospital, then you fire him, because the law says when you, the employer, have the right to dismiss, then you dismiss. Fellow, there's a confirmation because you, the minister, you are not a medical officer. Even if you are a medical officer, that is not your consulting room. So you send somebody, send the person to the hospital so that a well-qualified medical officer will confirm that the person was drunk. But to transfer him to your office, I think it was just a spur of a moment because the gentleman had been working very well. And so I think it was just a spur of a moment in the heat of things. So we can spare him for that one. All I want to say here now is this. Government in office as government does its politics. But when it comes to labor relations, government sees itself as employer. And they are bound by the same labor law. Everybody in this country
really
is bound by the Labor Act of Ghana, except the armed forces, the police, and the security and intelligence agencies. Even them, they only cannot form a union, but they have the right to eat from the policies of the nation. All I want to draw attention to is that the employer, as government, has a right, just like Joy, multimedia employer has the right, the same as the Minister for Employment has the same right. So, we have had it for all this while. Now, I think we have come of age, 60 years. And we are 28 million people also.
It's more difficult to sack a government worker, or nearly impossible to sack a government worker, if I may say.
It shouldn't be so. It's just something that they have entrenched, themselves. I've seen people sacked before, but it takes time to do it. But the law is clear. We have one labor commission. If they are misbehaving and you don't like it, report them to the labor commission. The labor commission is not meant for workers in the sense of union. No. It's not meant for individual worker like you alone. It's meant for the employer. It's meant for the workers. It's meant for unions. It's meant for non-unions. People can apply to the Labor Commission. The commissioners will examine the thing that you have brought. If it's within the confines of the law and best practice, they will give an order. That's how it's supposed to be. So the excuses that we have been giving is unacceptable excuses. And we have ourselves to blame. The question is, who pays the monthly pay of the worker who works in the public service and civil service? It's the taxpayers. Therefore, the taxpayers are their customers. And if it's the customer that pays you, then you have no choice than to do the work that you have been assigned to do. And if you are not doing it, are they giving them the target? Are they appraising them? If they are not appraising them, as a CTN, I can guarantee you, no single worker in the public service and civil service have really, in the true sense, been given its targets, or if you like, in the modern sense, key performance indicators, as the case may be. They have not been given yet. They have to give it to them so that you can appraise them on the basis of that agreement between the two of you, so that you pay based upon the fact that the person has contributed to the growth of the business. And that's what the law says. The law says in Section 98 that we must pay by matching the remuneration with productivity. It's virtually nil. Talking about it, I hear people talking about it in recent few days, but it shouldn't be a figure of speech.
So how much defense has the employee got if he says, well, since I was hired, I haven't been given a target, and maybe I haven't even been given my tools, and I've been hired. So if I haven't worked up to standards, well, I mean, how much of a defense?
They have a huge wall of defense. They have a huge wall of defense that they can stand on and say, I don't know what is going on. I have come to work. The employer is expected to give me that instruction. The policies maybe are not in place. If they are in place, maybe inadequate. If they are there, then cascade it down through the heads of departments to the people who work under you. They must have their KPI. They must, on the basis of that, be appraised. They must, on the basis of that, because we can't use, like in the recent past, 70% of the national income to pay people because of demands. No, 35% is about the world threshold. If we exceed it excessively, it means we have gone to some 37, 40%. If we do that, we are killing the nation. And so it's for government as an employer to account for its stewardship also by doing what we are talking about now. That is what, if it's only me that we have the 28 million people in this country, it would be beautiful to see how I judge, people I put in office. Because it's not fair for us to contribute money to be put into a kitty and be used to pay people across the board for the sake of it. We must be able to pay people for their contribution they put in, and not just paying everybody 15%. If I pay everybody 15%, what is the motivation for me to work intelligently more than and exceed the expectation of the employer? That's the point.
On the other hand, the private employer too seems to have too many rights. I can hire and fire you at will. You can work overtime and I won't pay you. And, you dare not complain because, you've been searching for 8 months. You've now landed a job. Are you now going to make your demand that, I listened to Austin Gamey on TV. He says I have rights. Really? Yeah? Well, go to Austin Gamey.
Well, that is fine. But the point is this. Employers, both in public and private, have the same rights. Indeed, employers in the private sector are making some maximum use, to some extent, of the labor law properly. Some of them are have not taken off, just like the public sector. Some of them are not doing what we are talking about now. I work for a number of them as consultant, and I can tell you some of them are not doing that. The point here is that they either are afraid of the system, or they themselves have something whether to hide. Whatever it is, I cannot fathom it. But the important thing here is that the law is very clear. Unfortunately, our law is not supposed to be an interpretable law per se. It's an applicable law. It's written in a simple man's language that you pick it, you don't need anybody to interpret it for you, can apply it, and it's workable. And should you have difficulty, look for somebody to assist you or go to the National Labour Commission to guide you as to where you should go and where you shouldn't go. So both the private sector and the public sector have the same right. The workers have a right. They have also a duty to perform. And I say the law says...
all from the same law?
Yes. The law says in Section 11C that the worker is to enhance the productivity of the employer based upon the target that you are giving him. If you don't give him, you don't have to blame the worker. And on top of it, the law says in Section 98 that it's for me, the employer, to ensure that I match your productivity with the pay I pay you. Because I'm not going to borrow money from any bank with this high kind of thing to come and pay you just because you put in appearance. If I am lazy employer, and I'm unable to do what I'm supposed to do, I have myself to blame. You don't blame government, you don't blame any worker anywhere. Don't blame any union, blame yourself. And if a union should come and is demanding from you, again, you must start blaming yourself, because the law is very clear as to how you should share relevant information with the workers, leaders. If you share that information, and I used to give this example to people I teach, if you, Nana, you are earning 7,000 cedis here, and you lie to your wife that you earn 12,000 cedis, she will demand from you something else. If you earn 7,000 cedis and you share relevant information with your wife, and you genuinely, you love her and you share information, she will not demand more than your pay, because your wife knows your pay. But if you hide information from your workers, they will come and bring their plate, give me soup, and the soup is their pay. And they are asking you for it. Why? Because they don't know, they come to work, they think they have done enough to earn so much, and now pay me, you are saying you don't have money. What is the reason why you don't have money when I have come to work every day? So let them know that this is our plan. These are corporate, objectives. We have achieved 70% of it because of A, B, C, D. This is the cost structure of how we operate the organization. We pay so much for utility, we pay so much for this, we pay so much for this, we pay taxes. You brought the thing, you project it, everybody can see. The workers will not demand beyond what you have generated. So you share what is for cost of labor, because they know you must pay their social security, they know you must pay their second tier, they know you must pay their pay, they know they must come to work and they need stationery to work with. The workers are reasonable. But if the employer is hiding that information from them, obviously they will bring their plate and demand, give us 50% increase, when they know that it's an exaggerated figure they are requesting from you. And you, because you are a lazy employer, you will meet the consequences as the case may be.
How much of a right is it for the worker to put in their best to get the business or their place of work to grow? Or is it the worker just to, come do what they can do, and then, probably, the employer, well, the employee come in, do what they can do, and somebody else is supervise? I mean, is there anywhere in the book that says, look, Nana, when you get on TV, you must put in your optimum?
Okay, Nana, let me be very clear. In Section 8 of the Labour Act, the law enjoins the employers, even indeed before you employ even the number one person, you must write your policy. You must have your plans as to how you want to execute it. Then when you employ the people, share that information with them, because it's not meant for your drawer. When you share that information, demand from them that accountability, that you are to do this because of your qualification, your experience that you brought in the job, you have this talent, you are capable of doing A, B, C, D. So please do this, do this, do this. Let him tell you, I need further training. Train the person. You document it, all of you sign. So you have your KPI, I, the employer, the HR has a KPI. At the end of the first quarter, I'm going to interview you, have some kind of engagement with you, where coaching is necessary. I give you some coaching, and I'm talking about proper coaching by practice. You guide the person, he'll be able to perform those duties for you. So let's take all the people are performing that duty according to that, because the law enjoins them to enhance the productivity of the employer. The law enjoins them to work conscientiously in the lawfully chosen occupation. They must report for work regularly and punctually, and to protect the interests of the employer. And the law says the employer must protect the interests of the workers. So it's about help me, I help you. In effect, now we come to the sharing of the cake. Having appraised you, now you have scored, you are a five-star general. You have proved that you can exceed even what we have given you to do. This fellow is able to meet just about it. This fellow, you've done something well. The rest of them, you haven't done well. So now we are going to match the remuneration with productivity. So maybe we put together some 5% for everybody for putting in appearance. Because you have done well and exceptionally well, we're going to give you additional 12%. We're going to give the second person additional 8%. We're going to give the other person additional 5%. The rest of you, you are only entitled to the 5-5. So in effect, by the time 5 years is due, you would have reached the mid-section of the salary structure. because your performance is consistent. You know, those who are, you know, hanging around the periphery, they will march along. But that is what we call motivation. Otherwise, we'll be demotivating you, and the story you will hear is that, well, country broke, you know, broke, we all the inside. That kind of cliche. So we've gotten to a place where, I mean, we're talking about we are all not the same. Knowledge, acquisition, we are all not the same. Experience, we are all not the same. Skill, we are all not the same. So if I'm a consultant and I cannot expatiate and ventilate on these things for an employer to be able to put it in perspective the way you should put it, the work will be emaciated. It will not grow. So we need to grow the business. But we don't have core business around with us. That's the point.
I think it's an eye opener, knowing that we all work from this book and that nobody is more secured than the other. In the past, there's been too many labor agitations. I mean, unusually too many. I mean, what brings about that, and how do we make sure going forward we have, let me say, reasonable agitations rather than the excessive agitations?
In the law and best practice, labor management cooperation is a vital component of ensuring that the people management side of the business, HR, is taken on board seriously. Any employer that plays second fiddle to the use of human resource management in his workplace will suffer the paralysis. So what is expected of all employers is not to place human resource management to the periphery level, bring it to the front burner. And it must be equal to all directors in the company, because that is the people side of the business. Or where I have studied, whether you talk about Japan, you talk about Norway, you talk about wherever, I can guarantee you human resource management is the key. Setting the table we can set, but the people side of the business is very critical. These things are technology. If your computer should fall down, you can replace it. This one is almost irreplaceable. If you replace it, it will take time for him to be trained to reach where you have reached. So I think it's important that employers understand that human resource management and its development is key to the driving of the business to success. So if we can put measures in place and have the metrics as to how we measure and standardize everything in the organization, and use properly the HRs that are available and train them, and don't just engage just anybody for the sake of engagement. Be sure that the person you are engaging will do a real good job for you. Indeed, excellent job for you. Otherwise, you suffer paralysis.
Thank you very much. Mobilizing for Ghana's future through creation of decent jobs. Let me remind you all, and I know lovers of Manasseh Azuri Awene is launching his book this Wednesday at Christ the King at 5:30. Letters to My Future Wife. You have to be there. Very interesting. This Wednesday at Christ the King, right opposite the Flagstaff House, at 5:30 p.m. Letters to My Future Wife. And I always give you this number before I leave: 0243 662001. Tantis Fashions, they make my shirts for the show, and I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Austin Gamey. Thank you.
Most grateful.